We could survive that. We could survive that. We could survive it.
Hello and welcome to We Could Survive That, your survival guide to the movies. I'm Jack, and today I'm joined by a man who's stuck in a time loop. It's Chris.
That would be my worst nightmare. A time loop, especially if I was aware of it and I was just repeating it over and over again. I don't like time loop movies, so for that to happen in real life would be a genuine living hell. I mean, I suppose it depends what time loop you're stuck in. If it's something really fun and good, but even that after your 80th time, you're going to be like, oh God, this is horrible. I just want it all to end. And then you try to end it and you wake up again the next day.
These are some interesting things, Chris, that you've said, and we'll dive deeper into your fear of time loops and your apparent dislike for time loop movies, but that is predominantly what we're going to be talking about today. Palm Springs from 2020, directed by Max Barbaquill, starring Andy Samberg, Cristin Milioti, and everybody's favourite, Chris. Who's your favourite?
What do you mean he's my favourite?
Is J.K. Simmons your favourite?
I mean, I like J.K. Simmons. He's not my favourite, but I like J.K. Simmons.
Come on, he's everyone's favourite J. Jonah Jameson.
Okay, yeah, I'm not disputing that. It's also everybody's favourite aggressive drum teacher.
Oh yeah, I'd let him teach me drums, and then I'd quit as soon as he started shouting in my face. I go, I'm fed up of this, J.K. Simmons, stop it. I didn't even want to learn drums. I was here for the recorder.
Actually, I don't think he's a drum teacher now. I think he's a jazz teacher or something, isn't he? But it don't matter. We're talking about a different film. All right, continue with this time loop nonsense.
No, he's just an angry man that stormed into a music lesson one day, just started shouting at everyone, and the teacher was like, I've had enough of this, and just left him in charge.
And then he took over. Yeah.
Well, I guess that angry man is now the head of music. But yeah, Chris, Palm Springs, we are talking about that. Another movie that originated on Hulu, just like Run did last week. So here we go, Chris. Palm Springs. What do you have against time loop movies?
Okay.
Why don't you like the likes of Palm Springs, Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, that episode of Legends of Tomorrow where there's a time loop?
All right. Out of all of those, I've only seen Groundhog Day, and that's not bad. I got on with Groundhog Day. We found some common ground while I was watching it, and I thought Groundhog Day was an okay film. But I don't know, every other time loop stuff, it just actually, you know what? Okay, I'm telling another lie here. I also liked Happy Death Day and its sequel. All right, there's 3 time loop films that I like, but all the other ones I can't be dealing with. I don't want to watch them. You know, pun fully intended. They're repetitive.
Well,
it always goes to the same thing. The time loop. There's always this, you know, they always have the specific events that people clock on there in a time loop. Everybody always breaks out of it in the end. Normally it's one person. We guess in this film it's 2 people. I'm not entirely sure, but normally it's one person. But they always break out of it in the end. And the only thing that time loop films can give that sort of is enjoyable is all the different ways the person can mess up their day or do what they want, or die in certain ways, depending what type of film it is. But other than that, there's nothing else. And I hate sitting there watching a time loop film, waiting for them to clock on they're in a time loop, and it's like, oh, just hurry up and realise you're in a time loop. And it's no. Apart from those 3 films, I haven't enjoyed any other time loop films.
Well, I don't think there's an extensive amount of time loop films. We might have named all of them in that little rant, but just so we're clear, you haven't seen Palm Springs.
I haven't seen Palm Springs. No, you told me we were doing it. I looked it up. I saw time loop and went, nope. And then you said, oh, maybe it's better you don't watch it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to agree with you on that because I'm not paying money to watch a time loop film.
Well, you should, because it is quite good. It's a comedy and it does poke fun at other time loop-esque scenarios as well. Now, you've thrown me through a loop, Chris, because at the beginning you said that you'd hate to be stuck in a time loop. But correct me if I'm wrong, and I've misjudged you for the years and years that I've known you, but you're a man that likes a routine. And to me, a 7-day routine is something that you're quite entrenched in, and you like knowing what you're going to do on a certain day and not anything that drags you out of the routine, like me ringing you up and saying, hey, we're doing a podcast. Anything that knocks you out of your routine slightly upsets you. So I thought that you'd be well up for being stuck in a time loop, because then you're cutting 6 of your 7-day routine and you've just got one routine and you know exactly what's going to happen, and that would be your ultimate comfort zone. I guess it would depend on what day you were stuck in. A weekend wouldn't be too bad, but maybe a working week or a particularly busy day wouldn't be so good.
I work weekends, so a time loop weekend would be hell for me. Just constantly doing 24 hours of work over the weekend, it's not great. But no, there's a difference between whatever you do each week when you go to work and you do your food shopping on the same day and I don't know, whatever else you get up to, as opposed to being stuck in an actual time loop where everything, down to the most minute detail, is repeating itself over and over and over again. Is enough to send you absolutely insane. Whereas take this week, for example. I've been off work. I've been out doing all loads of various different things. So nothing the same as the other weeks. Now, if that was a time loop, I wouldn't be able to do that. I could go off and try doing some various other things, but it would just reset and be back to the very beginning again.
Yeah, no consequences, Chris. Damn to the consequences. You do what you want.
Everyone clocks on. They always go, oh yeah, no consequences. Oh, it's fun. I can do whatever I want. But after you've done... Because let's face it, depending on how long you're in this time loop for, you could literally do everything conceivable. And you only have a set amount of time. Whether the time loop resets at midnight or when you go to sleep or if you die and wake up. So you can do everything that you could do in your vicinity. And then if you want to do more, you can't think, oh yeah, I've got one day, no consequences, I'm going to travel to America. You can't do that because you're going to run out of time, your day's going to reset before you can really get anything doing. And after a while, depending how long you're in it, you will literally do everything imaginable that's within your reach or range to do. And then what? Then you're just standing there, banging your head against a brick wall repeatedly, and then waking up and doing it all over again.
Chris, what would be your ultimate this is hell scenario if you were in a time loop?
Do you know, I don't think it'd be a whole day. I think the ultimate hell time loop would be like a repeating hour of something that's just horrible to experience, and you're just stuck in it, repeating that one bit over and over again.
A rectal exam.
Yeah, one that's super invasive, really uncomfortable because they ran out of lube on that day, so they've just had to go in, dry, and you're there just crying, stuck in this time loop for all eternity.
Well, look, Palm Springs is set in Palm Springs on the day of a wedding. Now, I know you're not a social animal. So how would you fare in a never-ending loop of a wedding?
Am I the one who's getting married or am I a guest?
You're a guest. You're a very tentative guest.
Tentative guest?
Yes.
Well, how would I fare at a wedding? I mean, it depends what the wedding's like. I mean, after a while, it would be pretty horrendous, wouldn't it? But most weddings, I sort of hang back with just a few people. I don't like to mingle into the wider crowds or anything like that. But after a while, if it was a time loop, I would do that because you'd be bored of hanging back. And then it would just over and over again. It's not the worst place to be stuck in, I suppose, but it's definitely not the best time loop that I can imagine anyway.
Well, this is the events of Palm Springs. Now, you were talking about the predictability of a time loop and people discovering that, they're in the time loop. But this film kicks off. We're in the time loop. We're mid-time loop. Andy Samberg, who plays Niles, has been stuck in this time loop for God knows how long, years and years and years, to the point that he's forgotten what he does as a job before the time loop, and he's in one of his more lustful moods this go around. So he hits on Sarah, who's the sister of the bride. He goes through the motions, dancing and stuff like that, puts the moves on her, you know what I mean? Some wooing moves, takes her out to the desert, and then he is attacked by a crazy man with a bow and arrow.
Okay.
Which kind of kills the mood. Niall runs into a cave, disappears, and Sarah follows him into the cave. The cave is the source of the time loop, and they both get stuck in the cave, and Sarah's not happy with him. And shenanigans ensue, Chris.
So does the rest of the film take place in the cave, or do they get out of the cave and she gets stuck in the time loop with him?
Yeah, they get out of the cave in the time loop. They're both at a hotel, waiting for the wedding to start, and Sarah's not happy. Niall has got quite a nihilistic view of the whole time loop thing. He's convinced that everything is meaningless now, And he's like, it's one of those time loop scenarios that you might have heard of. And yeah, Sarah goes down the path of trying to kill herself, that not working, trying to go back into the cave, that not working, because going to the cave just resets the day. She tries to drive all the way home to Texas, does get there, but then she falls asleep because she's exhausted. And Niles tells her about the time that he took a bunch of drugs and managed to fly to... I forget where he got to, but he got stopped at the airport on the way there because he was drugged up and fell asleep and woke up back at Palm Springs. So it is possible to get out of Palm Springs, but as soon as you fall asleep, you wake up back there. So you could, theoretically, if you could manage to stay awake long enough, get maybe 1 or 2 sleep-deprived days before being sucked back into the time loop.
So this time loop, does it only reset upon sleeping and death?
Yes.
It doesn't reset when it hits midnight, for example?
No. So as soon as you fall asleep, you get sucked back to the start of the day. If you're killed, same thing happens. If you walk back into the cave, same thing happens as well.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the longest is a human can go without sleep before, they die, essentially, or just pass out from sheer exhaustion. But yeah, you could get 2 or even 3 days of sleep. I mean, the longest I've gone without sleep is 36 hours, I think it was.
I do not encourage people to try this. So,
oh yeah, don't try this, but that's the longest I did. So, and at which point, that was about a day and a half, and I was utterly exhausted, and I was falling asleep at that point, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. So, I reckon I could get a day and a half before I fall asleep, but then it's just going to reset, and you're stuck all over again.
Yeah. Well, Niles, on his own, tried different things to pass the time. He tried sleeping with various people in the time loop. There's other things that he hints to, like being a bit of a knob, but he's felt very much alone during this time, apart from one time very early on in his time loop when he bumps into Roy, played by J.K. Simmons, Chris.
And what does Roy do?
Well, Roy hassles Niles because he thinks Niles is giving the bartender aggro, and this is early on in the time loop. So Niles is trying to get his head around it. J.K. Simmons and him have a discussion about the deep, dark pit that is marriage and stuff like that. Then they do a bunch of drugs. And whilst they're high, Niles takes Roy to the cave and accidentally gets Roy stuck in the time loop. And the guy from earlier on in the film shooting an arrow at Niles is Roy, because he's pissed off that he's in a time loop. So every now and then he pops up to murder Niles.
So what's Roy's time loop? Is his time loop in the wedding as well?
Yes.
In a different place, or?
Well, he's in the wedding as well. He's a guest, but he wasn't at the hotel, so he drives in to the wedding. He doesn't do it often. He only really goes there now just to torment Niles and electrocute him with a car battery or blow him up or shoot him with an arrow and stuff like that, because he's real pissed off.
So this Roy, his time loop is set elsewhere. When his day resets, it's wherever he was before he drove to the wedding.
Yeah, so the time loop is basically where you wake up the day that you walked into the caves. Now, this is fine for Niles, who wakes up in the hotel with his girlfriend that he doesn't really like, and his girlfriend that always cheats on him at the end of the wedding anyway. So they're not happy. Roy is married, and he wakes up at home with his wife and his 2 kids. So that's not too bad for him. Sarah, however, her day begins when she wakes up in the bedroom of her sister's fiancé.
Okay, so she wakes up having had an affair the previous night, I'm guessing.
Yes, so you can see why Sarah would be more determined to break the time loop, because she's self-admittedly a bad person, but she's trying to be better, and she's a sympathetic and likeable character. And again, we don't know who put the moves on who in this scenario, so We'll see. And it's mostly Sarah that has the remorse. We don't actually get anything from the fiance of any regret. It's that guy from The Domestics and Superman. What's his name? Tyler something. But it's that guy. He's in it.
Okay, I can't picture that guy at the moment, so I don't know who that is. So, but fair enough. So basically, if Niles, as the character of Niles, takes anybody to his cave, they get stuck in a time loop. So in theory, he could take everybody from the wedding to this cave and have the entire wedding stuck in a time loop.
Exactly. There also might be an old lady that's in the time loop as well, because she comes up at the beginning and the end of the film and goes, "That was a great wedding speech, the best I've seen." So maybe there's that. And at the end of the film, when Sarah's about to attempt to leave the time loop, she goes up to her and is like, "Oh, well, that was a good speech. I guess I won't be seeing you again." And then she leaves. So it's a little weird. So maybe there are 4 people in the time loop.
Okay, interesting. And I mean, I got to ask, do they break the time loop? Do they find a way to do it? Is it explained why this cave creates the time loops?
It's not explained why the cave creates the time loops, but they do try a number of ways to break the time loop. Sarah's convinced that maybe it's a sort of karma thing, so she tries redeeming herself by telling her sister. We don't know what she's telling her sister at the time, but it's obviously that she slept with her fiance, and that doesn't work. So how would you attempt to break a time loop, Chris?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you try and figure out the reason. See if there was any specific point that triggered a time loop. In this case, it's the cave.
Magic cave,
so
yeah.
I would probably keep heading to the cave, but you said that resets the day.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I don't know how to break the time loops, because most of the time when these time loops break, they just end, don't they? There's no real reason. I mean, I can't remember how he breaks out of it in Groundhog Day.
He finds love, Chris. That's how he does it. Love is the strongest.
Okay, so
thing.
it's a Wonder Woman method. Love defeats everything. Okay, well in that case, I break out the time loop, the power of love.
Niles and Sarah do fall for each other, but that's not the thing that breaks the time loop, unfortunately, Chris. Love is not powerful than physics defying time loops.
Okay, gosh, I can't think of any other ways. Also, there's the danger of time loop stuff as well, isn't it? If you don't know how you got into it and you don't know what breaks it, that means anything could break it. And if you have been living your same loop over and over with no consequences, and then one day you're like, you know what, this is the day that I spent this loop murdering everybody, and he kills everybody at the wedding, and the time loop breaks, then what? You're fucked. So that's always a risk as well with time loops, which is why really you think you've got a day of no consequences, but there could be consequences if the time loop breaks. So you have to be careful. You can't just have solid, I'm going to do whatever I want day, because what if that's the day where the loop breaks? Exactly.
Very, very true. I imagine if you got stuck in a time loop, Chris, you'd be quite happy just doing the same thing over and over again.
I don't think anybody would be happy, and I'm pretty sure everybody would lose their minds eventually.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think for a period of time, you'd be quite comfortable with it, because it's familiar.
It's not the same, though, is it, as doing stuff in a week as to having an actual time loop. It's not the same.
Well, you can still go to the bar. They go to a bar. Niles knows everyone in there, because nobody's quite sure how long Niles has been in this time loop, but he's gotten to know everybody rather well, both at the party and in the surrounding area and stuff like that. But Chris, if you don't know how to break a time loop, then there's only one place you can really go, isn't there?
Let me guess. Does he go to see a psychic?
No. Sarah just Googles the information and reads a bunch of physics books.
Oh, okay. And do the physics books hold the key on how to break the time loop?
Yeah, books are great, Chris. You should read some sometime.
I read picture books, I'll have you know.
I'm sure there were pictures in the physics books. Look, Niles and Sarah, they have a bit of a falling out during the time loop, because Sarah's, again, she's sick of waking up at this low point in her life, and she doesn't want to have to wake up knowing that she's cheated on her nice sister anymore. So this happens just after Niles and Sarah sleep with each other. Then Sarah acts a bit aloof. Niles is trying to, express his feelings for her. They get arrested by Roy, who's pretending to be a cop. Sarah runs him over. Then a real cop shows up, handcuffs them both. Roy's in a great deal of pain, bleeding out on the floor after being hit by the car. And Sarah and Niles have an argument, which leads to Niles saying that has in fact slept with Sarah a bunch of times during the time loop, which Sarah does not take well. She steps in front of a van, starts the time loop for her over again. And because Niles doesn't know about the affair, he can never find Sarah. So she wakes up before him and always leaves Palm Springs before he can find her. So it's upsetting. It's a low moment, Chris.
Is it? That sounds like classic rom-com nonsense where the couple or the couple that are going to end up together and they start off having their little lovey-dovey stuff, and there's always the big fight or breakup at the midpoint or near towards the end of the film. And then they always reconcile their differences and get back together to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, and it works, Chris. I did feel better about myself. It is a little bit more complicated because Niles wants to stay in the time loop with Sarah because he's just been there so long. Sarah doesn't want to stay. But it leads to a big climactic moment where Niles runs after Sarah to go with her to leave the time loop because she thinks she's found out a way to break the time loop. This comes after Niles goes to Roy's house, because Roy's the only other person stuck in the time loop and knows what he's going through. And after Roy was hit by the car, he's like, I've learned to appreciate life a bit more now and be less angry at you. I'm going to enjoy my kids and my wife. And, they're doing weird, dumb kid stuff like watering a dog poo and stuff like that. And then...
How young are J.K. Simmons' kids in this?
They're not... Well, that's a joke. It's like Roy's happy that he had twins at his age and that if he'd had one less pina colada, he would have put the condom on right and they wouldn't have been there. So he's...
Okay.
he's having fun with this role. He makes it back to Sarah. And do you know how they're going to escape the time loop, Chris? Do you know what books and the internet and FaceTiming physicists has taught Sarah how to break the loop?
I got no idea, but please enlighten me.
Strap some C4 to yourself, walk into the portal and blow up the portal.
Oh, so destroy the cave in the hope that your day will reset, but the cave's destroyed, so if it's creating the time loop and you destroy it, it should end the time loop. But how do you know that going in there and blowing it up won't just kill you and the day will continue onwards?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Sarah doesn't know. She tried it on a goat, and the goat didn't reappear in the time loop, so she's not sure what happened to the goat. But it's an end to the loop, whether she dies or whether she escapes the time loop, and Niles wants to go with her.
Okay, so do they walk in there hand in hand, C4 strapped to them, and destroy the cave?
Yeah.
And do they get out the time loop?
Yeah.
Oh my god, but is it where they both die, or...?
They do both live. It's the wedding's on November 9th, and they wake up November 10th. And, they're fine, and they've got the rest of their lives ahead of them. Also, Sarah does leave Roy a phone message telling him how to get out of the time loop as well. So we get a sort of mid-credit scene where J.K. Simmons goes back to the party, taps on Niles' shoulder, and Niles has got no idea who he is. And J.K. Simmons is like, right, I'm getting the fuck out of this time loop.
Okay, so then he goes and blows himself up as well. Why do you need to blow yourself up in the cave? Why did the goat not work?
Well, the goat did work. The goat got out of the time loop.
Right, so...
There's a precise timing of when you have to blow up the cave. It's some made-up physicsy stuff, but it works. Chris, let's face it, it's better than the power of love. The power of plastic explosives.
Where do they get their plastic or the C4 from? Where?
They're in America, Chris, and every now and then they go to a gun range where there's a redneck that's got bazookas and shotguns and puts up pictures of the man that his wife ran away with and shoots at them. So
That seems healthy, yeah.
it does, yeah. So they probably steal it from him. Oh, also Niles tricks that man into giving him a lift to the cave by saying that he's his long-lost son, which he would have gleaned that information from him through the countless times he's been through the time loop.
Okay, so but the guy drives him to the cave but doesn't go in, I presume, so he doesn't get stuck in the time loop.
No, he just drives him to the cave, watches them walk into the cave and blow themselves up. So
Oh my god. So he's going to come out of that thinking, oh my god, I've just seen these people commit suicide.
by blowing up a cave.
Blowing up a cave. That's, my god, that poor man, what's he going to do for the rest of his life? He's either going to report it to the police and there'll be a big ass investigation, or he'll keep it to himself and just, that could really affect him mentally.
It could do, yeah. But I'm sure they drove past and went, hey, we're okay. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just let him live in doubt or whatever for the rest of his days.
God, I mean, I don't know what would be better, because if they drove past and went, hey, we're okay, and he's like, ah, my God, because I saw you guys blow up, and then he's like, thinks he's losing his mind because he's on his 12th bottle of whiskey or whatever. And, oh my, no, I don't know which either way. Either way, they've scarred this guy mentally.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's ever going to recover. They may have got out of the time loop, but they've destroyed a person's life in doing so.
Well, maybe he'll learn from the experience and move on from holding hate in his heart for this man that made his wife run away or whatever. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
He's a very minor character. Look, I would recommend watching Palm Springs. It's a good, fun comedy with some good acting and great storytelling and stuff. So yeah, Chris, time loops. Any other survival tips for time loops? Because what are you going to do? How do you kill time in a time loop? I mean, like flying planes and pretending that there's a bomb in the wedding cake and getting it out of the wedding cake, loading it into a crossbow and firing it into the air and it explodes and being the hero.
Does that happen in the film?
Yeah, and then Sarah comes on with an eye patch and a hook hand going, "Arr, I'm the villain."
So they get so bored that they decide to make like a little superhero bit.
Yeah, they also rehearse a dance, walk into the biker bar that's close to where they're staying, do a whole dance routine and then leave.
Okay, fuck's sake.
Good stuff.
I mean, it's like, yeah, you've got a lot of ways to kill time in a time loop, but it's already all been said, you're going to run out of things to do, aren't you? I suppose if there's somebody else who's stuck in a time loop with you, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
But even that's going to run stale eventually.
That's the kind of moral of the story, Chris. And when they meet back up and Niles is trying to woo Sarah back, she's like, what if we get sick of each other? And Niles is like, we're already sick of each other. So it's a good metaphor for marriage, I guess, Chris. Having never been married, I cannot say if that is true or not.
But probably is.
Yeah. You've been in a long-term relationship, Chris. It's like a time loop, isn't it? Bearing in mind, I am recording this.
It's not like a time loop. Every day is as fresh and as beautiful as the last.
But seriously, it's like a time loop, a living hell, yeah? You can tell me. I'll cut this bit out, Chris. You can tell me the truth.
I've fallen into this trap before. I know exactly what's going to happen.
What trap? This is just two dudes having a conversation about love and time loops.
No, well, let's leave love alone. Let's go back to the time loop stuff.
Okay. Wink, wink.
No, wink, wink.
Wink, wink. How do you feel about, would you marry a time loop?
Oh my God. I do not want to be stuck in any time loop, period.
Wink? Is time loop code for relationship?
No, it's not time loop, it's code for time loop.
Okay, which is code for...
Time loop.
Okay.
Just a time loop.
Okay. Well, that was our first foray into a time loop, Chris. As far as time loops go, it's a nice one. We weren't being tormented by any murderers or killer groundhogs. I've not actually seen Groundhog Day. I'm assuming that Bill Murray is just constantly attacked by groundhogs that want to eat his flesh.
No, there's just one groundhog that they get out at like a little celebration thing that they have on Groundhog Day.
Oh, and it doesn't kill anyone.
No, it doesn't kill anybody. No, it's called Groundhog Day because that's just the name of the celebration. The actual groundhog is just in it for one little bit in the event. Has no other significant impact on the film.
So the groundhog isn't a wizard in disguise that's causing the time loop?
There is no wizard in disguise.
God damn it. That's not cool. But at least there's no serial killer or anything like that. And the worst thing that happens in this is the wedding. Am I right, Chris? Relationships and time. Okay, fair enough. I've tried to trick you enough. This whole episode was just an elaborate ploy to trick you.
To trick me. I knew it. This film doesn't even exist, does it? You just made it up on the spot.
Exactly. J.K. Simmons would never be in a film not playing.
Period. He would never be in a film where he doesn't play an angry teacher or a newspaper editor.
Yeah. You don't know. I don't know what his job is. I mean, he's got access to a large amount of weaponry, so maybe he's a PE teacher. I don't know. He's definitely got a bow and arrow. At one point, Niles gets into a bin because he doesn't want to drive home, and Roy just shoots him with an arrow and just puts him in the recycling bin.
That seems nice.
It's very funny. I do wonder whether the timeline continues, whether it's like a branching thing, like every time loop creates a parallel universe where they have to deal with the consequences of whatever nonsense they've been getting up to in the time loop.
Oh, see, now there's an idea for a film. It starts off with somebody who's already stuck in a time loop, and then they do something horrific, so I think it's going to reset, and then it doesn't reset, and then they've got to try and deal with it.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, next week we'll be back with another episode of this delightful podcast.
Excellent. And of course, now we're going to be doing more time loop stuff. Please tell me we're not doing more time loop stuff.
No, we'll do something else that isn't timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, so
thank God.
You're clear, Chris. We won't be doing another time loop film for, I don't know, a year or so. We tried to spread these things out. We cover a wider range of films, Chris. I think this might be the first rom-com that we've done.
We did Shaun of the Dead.
That's a rom-com, horror rom.
It's a rom-com with zombies.
Yeah, but this is more traditional, I guess. No zombies. It's not blurring genres.
I mean, it is, because it's blurring rom-com with sci-fi.
Yeah, true. Chris, how do people get in contact with us?
Oh, well, they can email the show at gmail.com. At gmail.com? I mean, that's the first part of it.
Gmail.com.
You can email us at wecouldssurvivethat@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter at wecouldssurvive, or leave a comment on any of the videos if you're able to.
Yeah, subscribe and review us. That helps, apparently. So yeah, do that if you want more delicious content. I mean, you're getting it, because we're going to be back for episode 325 next week, Chris. It's good stuff, maybe. We'll see. I don't know what we're doing yet, but we'll do something. So yeah. Chris, end the show.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been listening to We Could Survive That, your weekly survivor guide to the time loop rom-com movies that we specialise in, maybe. We're going to see you next week, but until then, keep on surviving. And remember, your day's going to reset no matter what you do. There are no consequences. Live free. Goodbye.
We could survive that. We could survive that. We could survive.
Hello and welcome to We Could Survive That.
No!
Your survival guide to the movies. I'm Jack, and today I'm joined by a man who's stuck in a time loop. It's Chris.
Well, in that case, there's no consequences, so I'm just going to hang up now. Goodbye.
Don't hang up. Chris, we're doing a podcast. You can't leave. Son of a bitch. What am I paying you for? Oh my God, he has hung up. What a prick. I guess I'll do the podcast.
I've returned.
Oh, he did return. Good. I can't wait to do this week's film, Chris. It's Palm Springs from 2020. It's directed by...
Please stop. This is my 200th time of doing this episode.
And we're going to do it until we get it right, Chris, okay? We are not leaving this time loop until we have produced the best possible podcast. I guess that'll do.
No.
I'll end the time loop, Chris. Right, ready? Let's walk into the cave, hand in hand. Blow that sucker up.
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, fine. I'll do that. You be stuck here.
Goodbye.
Hello.
Yes.
Welcome to
Don't start this nonsense.